Today we're going to be talking about the Catalan opening, which is a very solid, very reliable weapon that you can play with the white pieces against everything, okay? The players who will benefit from this the most are those that are potentially more intermediate, but beginners, stick around because this opening is truly fantastic. So the first move of the Catalan, as far as I recommend it, is the queen's pawn. And then the setup that you go for is two of these pawns in the center, the knight out, and then you develop your bishop to g2 and castle your king. So what that looks like, let's say something like this. Non-confrontational approach from black. Black doesn't immediately try to get our pawn. Black doesn't play the Anglian gambit, for example. I'm just going to show you the setup to begin with. You can just go knight f3 first if you don't want to play it in queen's gambit style. Fianchetto your bishop. Say something like this. Black does the copycat approach. Doesn't really matter. Essentially what I'm trying to show you here is this is the approach that you're going for. You will be gambiting this pawn. Whether you want to do that on as early as the second move with the queen's gambit or later with the delayed Catalan, the point is the same. The point is that if black takes, a couple things happen. This pawn is doubled, but for the moment, black is up a pawn. This capture opens up your bishop. So in the future, you'll often have this move knight to e5, which will have the benefit of opening and pressuring on this diagonal and actually just rerouting and taking this pawn. Now, in a perfect world, you win this pawn back and black traded their d pawn for your c pawn. So you have the two central pawns. And again, in a perfect world, you will finish your development and get two central pawns with more space in the center of the board. If black hangs onto this pawn with moves like b5, which at the moment is impossible, but I'll show you when it is, then you can use certain undermining moves like b3 and a4, and a4 on the queen side to chip away at the defense. So let's say that black doesn't take. Okay, let's say that we just get a regular standard position, maybe something like this, more defensive. When we finish our development, let's say black just plays something like bishop here. You're going to have a lot of different versions. The black setup is not the most important thing in the world. What you are going for in these positions is a combination of a few plans depending on how your opponent plays. So queen b3 is always useful when b7 is a weakness. When is b7 a weakness? When black has moved this bishop out. You're also looking to play e4 if it's possible. So let me just give you a funny example. Let's say, this bishop is not covering the center. You can play moves like queen c2, which then try to expand in the center of the board with e4, taking more space and ultimately helping your development. Because when you move this bishop out, what's going to happen is you're going to put both rooks in the center of the board. So that's just a couple of plans. I mean, there's also this knight hop into the center that we know about. That usually happens more like this. And also you can quite simply start a pawn storm on the queen side. You're not really going for the king. You're not going to have some crazy knockout punch, attack on the king early on. Like I said, it's a more slow developing process. You'll notice that this bishop hasn't moved. Sometimes you put the bishop out to b2, which is very solid. You can also make this trade if you like, and then replace the dark squares, right? So something like this, just some people like to make this trade because you can then put all of your pawns on dark squares. So you've traded off your dark squared bishop. That bishop is no longer part of the game. And then you go for, plan number 2 or plan number 1, depending where it is on your list. Queen side expansion, something like b4 and so on. Really trying to maximize this light squared bishop. Most commonly, I'll say this. I'll say that when you play d4, what you're going to face the most is just something like d5 or the King's Indian defense. Right, so you will face a lot of knight f6 and so on and so forth. And so when you play like this, you can offer the queen's gambit right away, which is already what I said. And here you don't even have to set up your Catalan. If they take it, you can just take the entire center. That's really the point of the queen's gambit. So you choose how you do it, whether you want to play it early or not. And what black is going to usually do is black is just going to play something like this. A lot of people learn the queen's gambit declined, and I will make a video on the queen's gambit system soon. You'll play bishop g2, I'll play bishop d6, castles. Now you'll go for your c4 idea. So in a position like this, like if black were to take, again, you know about this knight e5 idea. But here it doesn't quite work because, you know, you don't necessarily want to make this trade. There's a couple of other ways to win this pawn back. First of all, you can win it back with this knight. Second of all, you can play queen c2 because, again, remember, the other idea is to take the center. So you have this kind of fusion of ideas that you can mess around with and try to find where you implement at what right moment. Take over the full center or win this pawn back right away. I'll show you, you know, just for clarification. Like, for example, in this position, knight e5 is actually quite different because the knight just simply cannot be captured. So that is a reasonable move. Knight d2 to take is also a reasonable move. And what I showed you is, if something like this occurs, remember that you always have possibilities here, but you also can just undermine that pawn. And if it takes, then black has a rectangle of doubled isolated pawns. So for a moment you're down 2, but obviously you will be winning both of them back. Then you will take the center, play knight e5, and slowly expand in a positional manner. That's really when this capture occurs. If it doesn't, if black just plays really solidly, you know your plans here as well. I recommend you don't take. You always allow this to happen, so just keep on developing. You do have that trade that I talked about earlier, where you can replace in the center just to get this bishop out of the way, or just b3, bishop b2, slow expansion, and look for a central e4 push. If you watch this video 1 or 2 times and then try to implement these sort of game plans, you'll start gaining experience, and these positions will come more naturally. Now, the King's Indian is something you're also going to face a lot. Obviously, there's no gambit of this pawn, so what those positions will look like. And actually, I'm not a huge fan of playing the Catalan against the King's Indian. I think there are ways to pressure King's Indian players early on. If you haven't seen the ideas, check out my London video. I look at a couple different ways there, but here, you know, the position will look a little bit different. Since you don't have this capture, what you're going to try to do once again is maybe take a lot of space on the queen side. So advancing with these pawns, taking space, attacking on that side of the board, or as I already said, looking for this trade, bishop, or let me just show you one more thing. Let me just play a random move. Bishop here. Look for the trade of the dark squared King's Indian bishop. That's another very common idea against the King's Indian player. And remember that King's Indian players are looking to play e5 or c5. And both of these moves have merit. So if you actually attack a King's Indian player early with a move like d5, which would attack this knight, obviously if there's no knight, consider not attacking it. But if the knight is there, then you can target it and prevent black from getting the setup that they're comfortable with. So you will face d5 and King's Indian the most. And I guess before we end off, what to do against any sort of England gambit, just take it. You don't need to go for the Catalan. And what I always recommend is you don't even have to enter the main line here. Just develop your other knight. And if they take back, just play e4. Just be simple. Knight c3, e4, bishop out, and short castle. That's the best and simplest way to deal with the England gambit. If they play it very aggressively, you take with the queen, develop both bishops, one of these 2 squares, and then just castle in either direction. England gambit is not something that you have to worry about. And if they play c5, the best thing to do is just to push the pawn in the center, defend it with c4, and then go for your full center setup all the same. That's as quick of a repertoire in the Catalan as I can give you. If there's any sort of questions that you might come up with after 1 or 2 views, let me know in the comments below.